Welcome, Jerry, to your own podcast. I am Rita Richa. I am a content strategist for Be the Stage and a content strategist for the show Behind the Scenes. But as we were kind of reviewing work behind the scenes, I was noticing, obviously, all of you listening, Jerry does a phenomenal job of explaining business practices, leadership, and mindset. And I thought it would be fun to take a little deviation from the norm and actually interview you for once, Jerry. And today we are putting a CEO little case study review in the hot seat. His name is Jamie Dimon. And Jamie Dimon is kind of a little bit, I guess, on Jerry's just list of people that we should be assessing his work ethics or not. But either way, if you're ready for it, Jerry, are you down? Are you excited?
I am ready. This feels very meta. I'm on my own show in my own show. It's very interesting. Very interesting.
It is.
Thanks for doing this with me. I'm super excited. New segment. I love that you've come up with this. And so let's go right in. Let's talk about remote work and Jamie Dimon.
Yes, getting right into it, we have some semi-recent news. CEO Jamie Dimon had a statement that came out where he mentioned working from home just doesn't work. And this statement has caused a little bit of a flurry of debate in the business world since the increasing popularity and remote work arrangements have obviously increased since 2020 and beyond. There actually have been a lot more people actually agreeing with Jamie Dimon's opinion, which has drawn some mixed responses as companies are just trying to look for new ways to reshape how they structure their work policies and build their culture. But while all this is happening and the debate of whether remote work works or doesn't work is going on, there are a lot of worries about existing remote working staff being unfairly targeted for cuts during this economic time of uncertainty for most businesses. So all of that context being, essentially, Jamie Dimon believes that remote work doesn't work except for those who are young working mothers. They should be able to remote work without any issue. But he doesn't think that it should be a thing, and he thinks everyone should go back to the office. So he's in our hot seat, and I'm curious, as a business coach who you've worked with many successful CEOs and different work structures, how do you feel about this sentiment of employees needing to return to office and not work from home? Can you share your thoughts or even your company's policy on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we've learned through COVID, Rita, is that work is something that you do, and it's not necessarily a place that you go. And I think Christopher Lochhead, brilliantly puts a delineation between digital natives and native analogs. And so when you think about digital natives, they would describe what we're doing right now as having a face-to-face meeting. Now, me as a native analog, I would describe this as we're having a digital meeting over Zoom. I would never say that we're having a face-to-face meeting. It's just the way in which we've experienced the world. And so I think sometimes, and I include myself in this, I'm hyper conscious about it, the old white guys in the room who are thinking about how to run companies are starting to only see the world through the lens that we grew up and that we see. We can tell you that there's been lots of opportunities and lots of growth in productivity, in total number of hours worked, because there is no delineation of the drive to work, the commute, walking in the building, ending your day, coming back home, being back in with family. It's the quick sneak peek of my email at 7 o'clock. Let me see if someone's responded on Teams or Slack and get that project continuing to move forward. And so I don't think there's any doubt that you can be successful running a company in a remote environment. I think the real key piece here is, how clear are we for our people on how they win as an individual contributor inside the framework of our business? And so when I really think about it, it comes down to trust. Do you trust your people, or do you need to be over their shoulder micromanaging their work or their perceived work effort? Because with all the digital tools that we have to manage productivity, when we look at KPIs and metrics within our business, none of that should change just because you're in an office or you're working at home. Now, I think the one piece that's really important to note here is I do believe that collaboration is critically important. And I do believe that collaboration when face to face is the optimal way to handle it. So, what I would advocate for is either a hybrid remote environment where we have certain anchor days where everyone's coming to the office on a Tuesday or a Friday. And so that we foster that water cooler talk, or those opportunities to sit down and discuss, hey, here are the challenges of the business, and here's how we can go resolve that. Now, if you are fully remote and you're everywhere across the country, then I would advocate for people to go to an area where sales teams have been doing this forever. They come together on a quarterly basis. They review results. They look at activities. They look at the strategies. They set the new course of action. And then they go back into the field all across the country serving the customers. So this is not new. I mean, sales teams have been doing this forever and ever and ever. And so I do think that there is a bit of an antiquated way of thinking, that if I can't see it, if I can't touch it, if I can't feel it, then it doesn't exist. And in a digital first world, boy, the world has changed a lot since, I started in business 25, 28 years ago. And so I think we need to continue to be thinking about how we evolve all of these policies and procedures forward.
I think the point you made regarding how some of these remote work practices are not new is very interesting, because there are people debating this like this is the first time that they've ever worked in international business, or they've had to take a call or conference call and work with somebody from another part of the world. So
Mhm.
I do agree with you. It's like how you structure this and your level of leadership is what's going to determine the success of the project, just like any other business project or a service that you would provide for somebody. But I do think that if that's the case, though, if it is not something that is quote unquote new, and obviously with the addition of tools or whatever that has evolved, why is it still that working from home doesn't work for some employers?
Other than being old school in their thinking, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I just think about this. I think at the heart of it, Rita, is there's a lack of trust in your people to do the right thing. And I'll take it a step further. If we were 100% clear on what it took for our people to be successful within our environment, to contribute positive ROI to the company, then it would be super clear, be easy to say, oh, well, Rita, she puts out, 7 widgets, and we only really need her to put out 5 widgets every day, whether that's handling a sales call, whether that's customer service and resolving tickets. But if we were really clear about what it was that success looked like, then it would be easy to measure everyone's ability to contribute. Where it becomes difficult is when we don't have that clarity and we don't have that trust. The easiest thing that we can default to is put your butt in that seat for 40 hours, and I'll hover over your shoulder every once in a while and make sure that you're doing the work that contributes to the organization. And I don't think anyone enjoys being micromanaged. But as leaders, if we created more of the 4 C's, right? The clarity on how you win and contribute to the organization every day, felt challenged by the work that you were doing, because if you're not feeling challenged, then you're going to move on. Comfortable with the tools, time, and training that you have to be successful, because it's one thing to have responsibility, it's the other to have the authority and the knowledge to be able to do it. And then the fourth is cared about by your leader. And I think if you just keep on coming back to those things, it doesn't really matter to me where people do their work. I'll give you an example where I think this is important. And we think about the next generation of companies being successful here is I have a friend of mine. He has 2 young kids and he works from home on Fridays. What he does is he misses one lunch hour earlier in the week. He takes his second lunch hour and he does all of his yard work, does a couple loads of laundry during that time. And that gives him hours back to spend with his young family. And to me, the satisfaction in being able to integrate your work and your life for just more fulfillment, more fun with your family, I mean, that's the real reason we do all of this. I love my work. I love the impact that I make. But at the end of the day, it's because I want to spend time with Rachel and Brooklyn and Briggs and create incredible opportunities with them. So I think that's an example where we can merge together a, a hybrid remote environment that satisfies many needs, right? And this guy is a top performer inside of his company, multiple promotions over the last 7 years. And so to me, I don't need to manage that guy. That guy is managing himself. He's doing a great job, and he's got a lot of people in his care. And so do I really care when people do their work? Not really. What I do care about is that they're doing high quality work in the amount that we need to make the company successful.
I definitely agree with you. It matters more the quality and the communication involved with delivering the work rather than when you're doing it or where you're doing it, kind of a thing. But I do think that those who are listening that maybe have not established these so-called widgets that you've mentioned
Mhm.
are having challenges finding qualifiers for that. Maybe it's a more consultative role. Maybe it's something that has more abstract thoughts to it. And that could
Mhm.
potentially be a challenge for either a remote or hybrid environment. So, what are some of these challenges that you've seen, if you have, and how would you advise this C-suite or CEO to overcome them?
I think it's a great point, right? So if you're in some type of strategic role, it is hard to quantify, oh, I came up with 7 interesting ideas that we're going to test. I think that comes back to what's the level of trust inside your organization? Because to me, that's the heart of what we're talking about. Do I trust my people to manage what it is that the objective is and their work product to move us towards that? And so I just think you have to come back to where is my trust, where I can establish metrics and KPIs, which, by the way, are healthy and good, and people should know if are they quote unquote winning every single day when they go home. I mean, imagine living in this amorphous world where I don't know if I'm doing a good job because there's no scoreboard, there's no metric for me to go like, oh, I'm first in my company solving X number of widgets through the system. That's amazing. I feel great about that. The company should want that. How do you manage people if you don't have those metrics to help you? Where it gets a little bit more squishy is in the places of, strategic or creative resources where people, it's a little less clear on the metrics, is what I would say.
What are some other remote work challenges that people often face? And what is your experience with resolving them, whether it's operationally, culturally, with the business, or just like overall with the overall like communication,
Mhm.
any of those categories?
Well, I mean, let's just start with what accelerated forward. When COVID happened, most leaders, the old white guys, had never used Zoom before. And suddenly, overnight, computers were being set up to take home, and you had to learn how to look into a camera and have a conversation with someone. That was very different than doing it face to face. And so I see potential communication issues to the point where remote workers could be potentially unfairly targeted. My answer there is you're constantly in life. I don't care if it's a personal relationship or a professional relationship, you're constantly navigating know, like, and trust. And so if you're not working hard to build world class relationships inside your sphere of influence and your area of responsibility, then that's a mistake on your part. And then you're easily marginalized, easily replaced, you're easily not contributing to the conversation. But if you're doing those things, I don't see any reason why people wouldn't notice, hey, Rita is a world-class producer. I want her on my team. This is amazing. And so I would just have people take a step back and say, am I doing the work to be known as a great producer? Am I putting out that level of work, that level of care and concern for my work? And then drive that back to the internal locus of control. I'm in control of this. I control my relationships, or at least my 100% of the half of my relationship that I have. But if I don't give anyone reason to question, to not trust me, I don't see where the issue is.
Yeah, I would say definitely is a two-way street. Definitely from my experience working in mostly remote environments, I still feel that the general tenets of effective networking and culture building are important as the individuals, the employees side as well. So for example, if there's a Slack channel, something that I've done before is make like a funny happy birthday video for one of my coworkers or a team lead that's just strictly internal. And it's just like a nice gesture, like any of the things that we would have normally done in an office where you passed around the birthday card and everyone signed it. What are some of the ways that you as an employee can do that, right? That's an employee's mindset. But then it's up to the leader as well to acknowledge and celebrate and implement those things when you see those employees doing that. It is that two-way street. And if you don't see value in the digital way that that person's trying to execute these small little things that build culture or, network and to get in new eyes to the business, whether it's new leads for business or potentially new employee recruits, as a leader, if you're not acknowledging that, then I question your leadership skills, even in a normal office setting. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the medium shouldn't matter. Being a human being is really what it's about. And I'll give you an example. I mean, I've been outsourcing all over the world for 18 years, back when I had my internet company. And just because the medium is different, at that point in time, I was using Skype because that was the de facto video standard that you would communicate with people. And I did things that I would normally do if someone was here in my same town with me, which is, Rita, can I take you for a beer? I'd love to get to know you better. And so I would send people, $10, $20 and say, hey, please go for a beer. I know that I can't take you, but that's what I would normally do if we were here. I mean, I think about my assistant, Maria, her daughter's birthday was just a few weeks ago, and so I sent her a little additional money to make something happen specially for her daughter. And that to me those are the little things about, like, do you know your people? Do you actually care about them? How old are they? Do they play sports? That's how you win as a leader. And so if you're not doing that in real life, then you're certainly not going to do it in a digital way. And so I think that's the evolution that we need to make as leaders, to say, how can I mirror my relationships that would be face-to-face in an office and also create the same environment inside a digital space, even though our proximity, may be digitally 10 inches away, but could be thousands and thousands of miles away.
I think it's so true because we're still trying to make those human first connections. But unfortunately, there are a lot of instances where people are unfairly targeted for layoffs if they're in the remote department. They seem to be more quickly caught or easily blown off. Like, what do you think about that? How can that be prevented? Is it still down to the trust, or is it just like a mindset shift that needs to happen?
Well, I mean, I can't get inside the minds of, leaders who are faced with those decisions. However, what I would think about is not location, but value to the business. And so just because someone's showing up in proximity inside my office doesn't make them more valuable than someone who could be 2,000 miles away in, rural Iowa. And again, I think it's just maybe I've been doing this so long. Proximity, location doesn't matter to me. Time of when you do the work doesn't matter to me. I mean, I get up at 4 o'clock. And the reason that I get up at 4 o'clock is because when I had my internet company, I had outsourced my programming to India. So I was getting up at the end of their day to check on their progress. What did you do today? What do you plan to do tomorrow? And what is it that you require from me to make sure you keep the velocity of work moving? I don't care when work gets done. What I care about is, here's the objective that I'm putting out. Here's the thing that needs to get done. You manage the way in which it gets done. And I think when we, where will history look back? I think in 20 years, we're going to look back and say, Does it really matter where someone is? Does it really matter the time in which they do it? Or are we really just interested in the outcomes that can be generated in the work that we're doing? Now, I do believe that there should be crossover times. I do believe, just like I got up at 4 o'clock to meet with my Indian programming team, I think there should be times when you are having synchronous instead of asynchronous conversations. But boy, you can get a whole lot done using platforms like Trello or Asana or ClickUp or whatever it may be. You can use all of those things to help organize your work. And then you have those check-ins where you're talking to people. So I come back to, it's not proximity, it's value. It's value to the business. And if you're creating an enormous amount of value for the business, you're not getting cut in my world. I don't care where you are.
I think there's value in that because you are prioritizing the things that move the needle in business rather than my personal potential and ability to communicate to move the needle with that remote team or whatever it may be. But I do think it's interesting as we are reviewing Jamie Dimon's workplace initiative that he's changed or this policy that he's trying to implement, that when he implemented this policy, he excluded working mothers who have young children, they work remote, they're fine, they're great. We applaud them, keep doing what you're doing. And we should, that's amazing. But I also would like to see from your perspective as a working father, how you feel about that potentially double standard that's being conveyed through this policy implementation.
I think it's horrible, no good, disconnected from reality of how families work in today's day and age. I'll give you an example, firsthand for me. My wife is a superstar. She's a VP of sales for a pharmaceutical company, and she travels quite a bit. And so a lot of the day-to-day when she's traveling falls to me. For instance, in the state of Florida, I find this to be ridiculous. However, in the government's calendar, there is a day that is Fathers Take Your Kids to School Day. Now, I think about friends of mine like Mark Wiggins, who takes his daughter to school every day, and I take my kids to school nearly every day unless I'm traveling. But the whole idea that fathers don't take their kids to school is as behind the times as the whole notion that only women are the ones who are staying at home or might need an exception like that. Because if I was working for Jamie Dimon and Rachel was doing what she was doing, I would expect that same exception because I'm going to be a high performer. I don't need to be managed. I don't need to special, I don't know,
accommodations or anything.
Accommodations. It's crazy to me that what's good for one gender wouldn't be good for all genders depending on your family situation.
So then that being said, we've had our debate, our pro and con of remote work. And I want you to pretend that Jamie's sitting right in front of us. You have a minute to give him that golden sage advice, to tell him like it is. He's come to you and he said, you know what, Jerry, I've thought about it and I want to change and I need your help. What would you advise Mr. Jamie Dimon to do?
So I think it comes back to, what's the company that you're trying to create? Is it in concert with your vision that you have? Is it in concert with the values that you're holding as a company? Because if it's not in alignment, then you're going to have a lot of pushback and a lot of blowback that this is not a modern day financial institution. And so if that's the institution that you want to create, great. If you want to be the old school dinosaur, then that's fine too. Just know that you're going to lose lots of quality people who are looking for flexibility, autonomy, and the ability to make an impact on their terms and not necessarily on your terms.
So would you think if he implemented a change of being more open to remote work based on the suggestions that you've provided, his company would, let's say we're not sure of where he ranks, but if he does, he would be one of the best places to work. He would rank that potentially?
I think it's pretty clear that the world has changed. I mean, even, Apple and Disney, who are in RTOs right now, I mean, they're circulating petitions not to return to the office. And they're now trying to figure out the people who don't return to the office, what do we do with them? Because they're still high performers. And I just think it's a company that's out of sync with what employees are looking for today. Again, we're looking for social responsibility. We all went home during COVID and we looked left and looked right and thought, am I just a transaction effort for a paycheck? Or can I align what it is that I'm doing with work that I love, my unique talents, and the impact that I want to go see? So the Edelman Trust Report guides us here. We're looking for companies that have social impact, specifically from the CEO who has an awareness and wants to take positions on certain topics, Roe v. Wade being one of the most recent ones. People don't want companies to just be vanilla while serving their product or service to the marketplace. They want to feel good that every day we're standing for something and we're doing something great. And I just think, I don't know, I always look at the research. Let the research guide you. Listen to your people. It's worked out pretty well over the last 3 years for most companies, right? And just because I'm not comfortable or I think it doesn't work, doesn't mean that it does. Maybe I need to stop and reevaluate myself as a leader and my openness and inclusivity to create a world-class organization.
So I guess hot tip, to have one of the best places to lead, you have to think about not yourself, but first and foremost, your team, what your company, and what you need after the fact. And that all comes together to create all of the things that you're talking about. You think that's right, Jerry? Amen.
Amen.
And the podcast says amen. Amazing. Well, if you enjoyed listening to this episode and hearing our hot take on Jamie Dimon, and you want to hear us politely, business way roast other CEOs, please leave a comment or send us a message on our Best Places to Lead page. And Jerry, close us out. What do you have words of wisdom or a sage moment to end this episode by?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you hopping on and doing this with me. This was fun, right? To just think about the impact that we're making as CEOs and as leaders inside an organization. I think the most important thing that I think about is not my comfort level, but what the comfort level is from the marketplace and what people are asking of me to help lead them forward. And I think if we're missing that mark or just brute forcing things forward, I think there's things that we need to think about that are greater than my myopic view of the world. And so that's where I would guide us.
Amazing, Jerry. If you want to hear more of Jerry's wise words, there are other episodes that you can check out with even other amazing leaders that he's interviewed as well. So we thank you for tuning into this episode, and thank you for allowing me to kind of take over your podcast for a day, Jerry.
Fun stuff. I look forward to doing these again.
Absolutely.